for those who are a little bit late coming back, perhaps. So the topic, differences between first language learning and second language learning. While we're here, let me just tell you that at the end of the session, these recordings will go into the platform. We'll put them in the resources section of the platform. Okay. And quite a lot there already. The resources section. And I'll put the recordings there for you. Some interesting resources there already. So, how do we learn languages? Well, a couple of questions for you. We can answer them, try and answer them together. What is your mother tongue and how did you learn it? Any suggestions?
By telling us few words. Like
Who your parents told you words?
Yeah.
By observation, hearing others speak.
Hearing others speak, yeah.
By
Yeah,
imitation.
Yeah, by the noise, by the sound, by listening to others.
Listening to others.
Yeah, primarily, yeah. Although maybe when you went through the school system, there was a bit more focus on more formal learning.
Teacher,
of the language, yeah?
what about when as babies we assimilate
Yes.
images or I don't know, yeah, images with the sounds. I mean, for example, as a baby you see someone talking about a tree and you see the tree, I mean, physically, so that's why you assimilate that word with the sound, I think.
Associate, I think.
You mean by association? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Now, is that process different from the way you learned English?
I don't think so.
I
Why not?
don't
No.
Why?
I actually
Because
don't remember. I don't remember because they teach us like English since you're in kindergarten. So I don't remember. I know that the teachers always play songs. So it's through music, maybe, yeah, through sounds. But
so could it be that your teachers of English were trying to teach you in a way similar to the way that you learned your first language?
Yes.
But I think also it's the frequency that you hear the English, like with our family, we listen the mother tongue like every day, each day, all the time. And English, yes, they teach us at school, like from preschool, but they don't talk to us in English like the whole time. So the frequency that they talk to us in the mother tongue than in English is different, like the time.
Right.
I believe we learn new languages by socializing, right? A new language by socializing with others.
But that's an important learning theory. Yes, is that socializing with others is an important way that we learn new skills.
That's according to Jean Piaget.
Well, yes. Although I think it was probably more characteristic of the social constructivists like Brunner and Vygotsky.
Vygotsky, yeah, Vygotsky.
I can say that maybe the difference is also that the foreign language, like first you start to understand, but you take time also to start to speak. You are not practicing it, you're not using it. I mean, I had it in my example, no, with English, with Spanish that I had to learn. First, for a year, I would understand perfectly, but it was so much harder to speak while your mother tongue, you
Right.
understand and speak at the same time. You just start imitating the words from your parents, from the people that you pass time with, no? And then when?
Very
and
good. Yeah. So the interaction's pretty important, you're saying.
Very,
Yeah.
very, because I would, for example, take Spanish classes, but they didn't work for nothing until I didn't come here and I had to speak. I had to learn, I had to speak it. And it's a
Yeah.
completely another story, no? But obviously, just to say that the classes did give me a base to be even able to start to understanding first and then to develop the speech part also.
Yeah, that happens with students. They go from comprehension to
Mhm.
production.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what about C? Have you learned English or another foreign language more successfully from formal study or just by picking it up? Or maybe you think that both are necessary.
I think both are necessary.
Yeah.
I'm
Necessary,
telling you,
necessary, maybe not, but useful. Yeah.
it's very useful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in my case, I mean, I came to Mexico over 26 years ago, and my Spanish was not good when I came here. However, I did take a 2-week intensive course at a university, and I think it sort of laid the foundations for me being able to.
Mhm.
A little formal study lays the foundations for you being able
Yeah.
to pick up the language more successfully than as if you didn't have formal study.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. For me, it was the same. That the base was necessary then to later be able to pick up,
Yeah.
as you say, the language.
Just, understanding the difference between ser and estar, which is, it's
Yeah.
kind of a basic thing, isn't it? Otherwise, you're not going to progress.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, how we learn languages. Across the centuries, people have studied how foreign languages are learned. Many experts now believe that one way we learn foreign language is by exposure to it.
Mm-hmm.
That is by hearing and or reading it all around us and without studying it. This is how children learn their first language. Exposure. Experts also say that to learn a foreign language, particularly as adults, exposure to language is not enough. We also need to focus our attention on the form of the foreign language, like how it's pronounced or written, and how its grammar is formed and used, and on the form and meaning of vocabulary.
Yeah.
So, research has identified 3 main ways in which we learn a foreign language. 1, by acquiring. To really learn a foreign language, we need exposure to lots of examples, and that we learn from the language in our surroundings. Acquisition takes place over a period of time.
Yeah.
We should listen to and read items of language for a long time before we begin to use them. Well, some people say that you should have a silent period. However, research has shown that the silent period is more common in children. When they come to a foreign country. Imagine you're a Mexican child and you go to live with your parents in Los Angeles or San Diego, right? When you're quite young. There'll probably be a longish period when the child is just listening to the English in their surroundings, right? Over there in the United States. And that's what we call the silent period before they actually begin to talk.
Well, I have some friends that they learn how to speak English by watching cartoons.
Yeah.
Or playing video games.
Yeah. Well, that's all, but I mean, they certainly would need the exposure, wouldn't they? So the exposure would come from the cartoons or the video games.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see how much how much interaction there is, or how much it's just listening and reading.
I want to share something about that you're
Yeah.
saying right now. I used to live in Los Angeles, and it was so interesting that even my whole life I was studying English. It was not the same thing. So for me, practice and yeah, like put myself into to listen and to practice, because they were speaking so fast. Even my whole life I was in a bilingual college, in a bilingual school, but for me it was so hard until I started getting it, like day by
So
day.
did you find that you had to listen a lot?
It was hard to listen. First it was hard to listen because they speak so fast. Well,
Yeah.
I thought they speak so fast.
Yeah.
And second, I couldn't speak because I feel that here in Mexico they teach us English in a grammatical way that if you want to say you want an ice cream, you say I want an ice cream, and they tell you like, okay, the pronoun is I, and then the verb want, and then when you're gonna put ice cream, what flavor, and those kind of things, and then there you just start relating the words,
Yeah.
like you just start relating the words. So for me it was like that helps me a lot to improve my English living in the US.
Yes, I
being
can imagine.
practicing
Yes.
and being practicing 24/7, like speaking English. But also it was interesting that I have friends, Latin friends, that had babies, and they were learning Spanish because their parents want them to learn Spanish. Even if they live in Los Angeles, they want them to speak Spanish. So they were like talking to them in Spanish, but at the end they forgot. They forgot how to say so many words in Spanish because of the school, because of the environment, because of their friends. So they stopped practicing, and that's the reason nowadays the boys are like 8 years old and they don't speak any Spanish.
Interesting.
When I used to talk them in Spanish when they were like 3 years old and they were speaking fluently Spanish, and now they don't speak at all. And they told me that they prefer to be speaking in English than in Spanish. I don't know if they still understand what I said to them, but yeah, for me that was like really interesting.
How old are they?
Right now they are 8 years old, and I met them when they were like 3 years, like little babies, and they were speaking fluent Spanish. But nowadays they don't want to speak at all. Like,
well, maybe they'll get interested when they get a bit older. That often happens, Yeah, that they want to discover their origin culture. Anyway, so we've discussed the importance of acquiring through especially listening and reading, but then interaction's important as well. So we learn through interaction, and we actually need to use language to express ourselves and to make our meanings clear to other people and to understand them. Now, maybe those kids you were talking about, they haven't been made to interact and so therefore they don't see the need to use Spanish. Yeah. If they were put in situations where they had to interact using Spanish, maybe they would, well, that would help them to acquire Spanish better.
Yeah, I think that's something true, because so many of my friends, they have married like Latin people. And for example, there's a friend of mine that lives in North Carolina, and she just married a Brazilian guy. So for her daughter, she's actually trying to learn Portuguese so she can help him to teach him like Portuguese. So it's like really
Right.
interesting. Yeah, the way that you need to be interacting with others, I
So,
think it's key.
yeah, I believe
Go
it's
ahead.
very
Okay.
important, because if you don't use the language, you might forget it, right? I just met that girl from Germany, and we were speaking in German, but she said that she was living in Canada, right? And then she wasn't able to speak with anybody, and then she was starting to forget some words and stuff like that in German.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. Interaction and memory are actually connected. Yeah.
In my school, for example, there's a no Spanish policy when it turns to English teachers. So my students, they don't speak to me in Spanish whatsoever, even though we're in class or not. Even in the hallways, in the library, in the cafeteria, they know I won't respond if they don't speak to me in English. So that's why that is a way that we force them to use English anytime they can.
Oh. And then finally, for focusing on form. This means that learners need to pay attention to language by identifying, working with, and practicing the language they need to communicate. Now, so nowadays, experts generally agree that we do not need to learn a foreign language best through grammar and translation, nor do we learn by constantly practicing until we form habits, or just by communicating. So we learn by picking it up, picking up the language, I think, interacting and communicating and focusing on form. So we need exposure, we need interaction, and focus on form. Now,
What do you think about the shadowing? When we're following someone else and we're repeating everything that the person is saying, it can be online. It can be by practicing with the movie or.
well, I think that sort of works on the idea that mimic is important. And I think that would come into the exposure part, right? So we need a lot of the spoken language, we need a lot of the written language, we need to be exposed to it. So the mimic could be that. But the problem with mimicry is it doesn't guarantee that you understand what you're hearing. Yeah.
You can use the subtitles in English, right? So
well,
then
you could have some
context
subtitles. Well, that might help with the understanding aspect of it, right? Aye. We're going to do an activity using some worksheets. I'm going to put you into two groups. So this might be the last activity we do today because it's going to take a while. Group A is going to have this worksheet, and it's all about similarities. What are the similarities between the way that first language learners learn their first language and the way that learners learn a second language in a classroom? So what are the similarities? Okay, this is going to make us focus on some of the terminology that we're going to need for TKT. Okay, so you can use your TKT glossary for this. Get out the glossary. I shared it with you in chat earlier, but here it is again. It's a good idea to download it, have it ready, because there's some terminology that you're going to need. There you go. So we're going to work separately in separate groups. And group B is going to work on differences. Here are the differences between the first and the second language learners. What are the differences between L1 and L2 learners? Got to complete the sentences with one of the words given. So we've got terminology like fossilization here. If you're not sure what fossilization means, you need to look in the glossary, right? And you've got to complete the sentences. Okay. Think of any other similarities or differences. Okay. And then we're going to, when we've completed these, we're going to go into pairs with someone who did the other one, and you're going to compare your answers. Now, let me put you into your groups for this. Let's just check that everyone is here. So, Sebastian. Have we lost anybody? Ines has left. Just give me a second. Let's see. All right, so here are the groups into the chat there. Put you together in those groups. Right, so I'm going to send you into the chat your worksheets. Oh no. Oh, there you go. Leslie. Lourdes. As soon as you get it, you can start working on it, huh? Maria de Lourdes no está presente? No. Okay. Okay, I'm going to change someone else then from the group. Joaquin can join group A. Joaquin. Mariana. Anna. And Mafa. Okay, now on to differences. So Sebastian, you are doing differences. Andrea, you're doing differences. Jesus Felipe. There's differences. Itzel. Itzel. No está presente.
Yes, it's me.
Alejandra, sorry.
Yes.
Silvia. Silvia no está presente. And then Paula. You're doing differences. And then we've got Lupita, finally. That's everyone, right? Okay. I want you to, you're going to go into breakout rooms, compare your answers to this, to your handout. Just going to have two breakout rooms, two big groups.
stops.
All right, so I'm going to actually give you the answers now at this point. But then I'm going to put you into pairs with someone who did something different from you, right? So, for example, Anna, I think you covered similarities, and Sebastian, you covered differences. So I'm going to put you into pairs in the breakout rooms again, so that you can note down on your worksheet. I want you to listen to your partner and see what the differences, the similarities and differences are, so you can compare your answers and make notes, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So Sebastian won't have any information about similarities, so Anna will give him some of the information about similarities. So it's like an information swap. Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, just so you can check your answers, I'll give you the answers at this point. How about that? Desktop, here we are, screen share. There we go. Just check that the answers you wrote were actually correct. Okay. So now I'll put you into breakout rooms with your partner, and if you have time at the end, you can do that final activity on the worksheet, which is how can we best help L2 learners? Maybe you could compare your answers to that. I'll give you plenty of time for that. How can we best help learners of a foreign language? So it's on the same worksheet. I'll give you some time to consider that as well. Number them in importance. Which are the most important factors? Okay. Recreate. Put you into your breakout rooms again. Anna with Sebastian. Leslie. Andrea. Joaquin and Jesus Felipe. Mariana. Alejandra. Itana. And Paula. And finally, Lupita and Martha. I'm going to give you more time this time, about 15 minutes should be enough. 12. Please go to your breakout rooms and compare your answers. Okay, well, we don't have too much more time left. I'd just like to ask Lupita and Maria Fernanda about some of the additional differences, similarities you thought of.
Of
You,
course.
you had some good ideas there. I'd like to
Okay,
hear you share them.
the difference that we found with my team, it was one, because of the time, is that in writing, the L2 learners are better than the L1 because they focus on grammar. Another difference is that L2 learners are unconfident. I mean, they are like afraid of speaking and expressing themselves in another language. And
Yes.
the third one that is connected to the first is that L1 learners, they don't really care about grammar. They just speak as we do. I mean, we as native Spanish speakers, we just speak the language and we have a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like the common for everyone who's a L1 speaker.
Good point. Any other interesting similarities or differences you thought of?
Not so far. We don't have any time.
Okay, that's okay. It's good. What about this terminology? Was any of the terminology difficult for you? What about interlanguage?
Interlanguage.
Yeah, was that a new term that you'd heard of before?
Yeah. Well, no,
You
not
had heard of
really.
that.
No, not really. But wait, I'm looking for the exact definition.
You can check in the
Yeah, I have it here open.
That might help.
yeah. In the glossary, right?
Yeah, I have it here, but I'm not.
Any other terms that you thought were difficult?
The fossilization, I think it was very interesting
Yeah.
because of the, the analogy. I think it's really good how a mistake or something is like stuck and it cannot move. It was
Yeah.
very interesting.
It becomes like a
Yeah.
fossil, yeah.
Also like a stone
Yeah.
that doesn't change. Yeah, that would be the terms that I found. Yeah, and about the interlanguage, I think it's a very common phenomenon of the language in all cultures, that we change, that we create our own version of grammatical systems.
Yeah.
And
Can you think of any? Have you heard any interlanguage from your students? Sometimes they make up words that are halfway between Spanish and English, don't they?
yeah,
Can you think of any?
they make a lot of mixes, and they maybe they are not even aware that they are making those mixes.
Yeah.
Right? For example, they say they talk about stalking people on Instagram, and they
Yeah.
say lo estoy stalkeando,
Stalkeando, right.
right? And then
Right.
me estaba stalkeando, right? I was like, guys, don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, it's a bit like that pochismo, isn't it?
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
yeah, they're making a fusion of
Yeah.
words,
Didn't know
and
what it is.
it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and then fossilization, the fossilization is a process in which incorrect language becomes a habit, cannot easily become corrected.
Yeah.
Good. It's a very interesting area. Okay. For those who are really keen on this, I'll give you a little optional homework. You don't have to do it. The main thing is that you do the stuff on the platform, but here is a little extra homework from, and it's from the course book. So you've got, it's related to L1 and L2 acquisition. First is to look at the pictures. What differences that influence language learning can you imagine between these two language situations? Think of at least 5 and make notes. It's optional homework. You don't have to do it, but I'll check the answers next week. Here are 2 learners. Which way would you suggest for them to improve their English, A, B, or C? So read the profiles of the learners. You've got to choose what you think is the best options. And I'll send that through the chat. Just so you consolidate what we've done today. Oh, one thing we didn't check was your answers to the final part. How can we best help L2 learners? Did anyone have any order they would like to show us? Joaquin, go ahead.
I look for other answers, and they were by creating a supportive learning environment, by using visual aids, and by simplifying language input.
Yeah, that would help.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I guess is by encourage, the first one will be by encourage learners to continue learning outside the classroom.
That would help. That would be your number 1, would it?
That would be my number 1, because yeah, I think it's the most important thing.
Why?
The language. And then I believe
but why is that important in your view? Is it because
sometimes you learn, well, teachers teach you how to speak English, but then you don't use the language properly. Because maybe you're ashamed of committing mistakes or things like that.
Yeah.
And then that's something that is not helping students to develop these speaking skills, right?
Right,
and I believe it's one of
a lot of students become very dependent on their teachers, don't they?
Come again?
A lot of students become very dependent on their students, and they become. It's like, teacher, tell me this, tell me that, but the problem is that the teacher is not always going to be there for the students. So I agree with you. We need to train, capacitar, train the students so that they can learn on their own. Learning to learn is important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's important, and that's one of the most important things, learning by your own.
Okay. Did anyone else have a different order?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think the number 1 is use the language at the level appropriate for learners, but keep it natural. Number 2, motivate learners through tasks and activities related of their real life interest. Number 3, include opportunities from learners to personalize related to the language they learn, to the real life interest and needs. And number 4, give learners positive feedback and praise. Number 5, balance input and practice so that learners receive exposure to the language from they need to engage in the communicative activities. And number 6, encourage learners to continue learning outside the classroom. And number 7, vary activities to take account the different learning style in the class.
Any reasons, Leslie, for that particular order?
Because I think that is very important the level of the learning, because if you force to use the language in different level, maybe he's confused and maybe he's blocked. So I think the number 1 is like my reason, and we discuss with the group. So maybe think there are my reasons.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone have anything different?
But I agree with Joaquin. I mean, the most important are the ones that talk about motivate. The first one that says motivate learners through tasks and activities related to their real life interests, and the one that says encourage learners to continue learning outside. I mean, for me, those two are the top of the top. So, and the rest, we didn't have time to rate them, but those two are my top.
Oh, thank you for sharing those. Good. Guys, we're pretty much finished for the day, as we finish at 7 o'clock. So see you here next week, same time, same place. And we're going to be doing reading and listening. It's going to be the main things. So there's kind of a lot of terminology there that we'll be looking at. Okie dokie.
Yep.
Thank you so much for everything. That's
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great night.
Bye.
See you next week.
See you next week.
See you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, teacher. Good night.
Night.
Thank you. Bye.